Happy Thursday, y'all. I cannot see without my glasses. Hello. Happy Thursday. Hey, Teri. Okay. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, welcome to Let's Go Live. I'm Gigi Mara. I have with me character-driven fiction author Teri M. Brown. Welcome, Teri.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here
I
today.
am too. I was looking through your books and what you had sent, and so I have a million questions. We probably won't get to it all, but I know it will be like a fun and fast hour.
Wonderful.
Okay, so starting from the top, tell us or tell those that are listening and watching, what is a character-driven fiction author in your definition?
So to me, character-driven fiction means that the book is more about the character and the journey that that character makes instead of where it is happening or the time period or the setting itself. And so I tell people that although I've written 3 historical fiction novels, that if you enjoy a good character, you'll want to go with my character wherever I happen to put that character. So whether it's in the past, the present, or future, or even into a fantasy world, that you're interested in the journey of the character.
Oh, I like that definition a lot. That's one of my rapid fire questions is plot or character, but I've never heard anyone describe it as succinctly as you have.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm succinct.
But you're right, though, because sometimes we get hung up on, oh, I'm not a fantasy a reader, or oh, I don't read sci-fi. And so we disqualify books based upon their genre. And so when you said, if you like the character and their journey, it transcends genre expectations, hopefully.
Exactly. And it's interesting. Recently, I would say that I am not a fantasy reader, but recently I have read 2 fantasies that were very character driven and I enjoyed them, really enjoyed them. So I'm rethinking that idea of what do I like and what I like. It's less about the genre and more about where is the focus. And sometimes it's not that the focus isn't on characters, it's just that their journey is almost secondary. And I just really love to see a great character arc. They start one place, they go someplace totally different, and that you see that journey and you go on it with them. You get to experience all of the feelings and all of the things. It isn't just something you see with your eyes, but that you feel with your soul.
I love that. So let me ask you, do you write in first person then to deepen that experience, or what tense?
So with my historical fictions, I've always written in third person past tense. And I think it's because that's pretty standard for historical fiction. Right now, though, I am writing a contemporary comedy with a little bit of romance on the side, and I'm writing it first person present
Okay,
tense.
so how does that work when you're a third person past and then you're moving to a first person present? It's tricky.
It is. In fact, I tell people I may be committing author suicide by like totally changing what I'm doing. But I like a challenge, and I've done 3 historical fiction with they're not similar, but they have some similar aspects. 3 different points of view in a family, and I thought I'm kind of getting tired of that. I want to try something different. I had this idea, and I started to write it, and I thought past tense isn't working. It's not working in this book, so I'm going to try it in present tense. Well, you wouldn't believe how many times I'm writing along and I go back and read what I've written and it's like, oh yeah, halfway through that chapter I changed the past tense and now I have to go fix it again. So
Girl, we all do that, right? Like it's so subtle. And
right.
my poor editors are just like, how in the world did this happen? I'm like, I don't even know.
Yeah, and the thing is that sometimes when I'm reading it the first time through, I don't even catch that I've done it. And then later I look and it's like, what is all of this ED stuff? They didn't do that. They're doing it now, and I have to go back through and change it. But I like it. It's really making me focus on the actual craft of
Mm.
writing because I mean, super naturally to me. I apparently write in third person very naturally. And this is harder. And I'm having to really like concentrate on the craft of writing. And I'm enjoying it. It's been a fun exercise, if nothing else.
Okay, I love that because writing craft, I feel like it doesn't matter how many books in you are, we're always learning, we're always trying to get better. And so writing craft to me is fascinating. And I'm always trying to like hack other people, other authors. Like I listen to masterclass, I have all these YouTube videos, I bought tons of courses because I'm like, how do I make it? How do I become a better writer? And they always say, well, just keep writing, but it's not that simple. So tell us your challenges on writing craft, like specifically what has been a challenge for you?
So I very naturally write dialogue. It's something that is not difficult for me. I am terrible at bringing people into the scene so that they know where they are.
What does that
The number
mean?
of well, like my book, I wrote a book that was in Ukraine, and my editor said to me in the first 4 chapters, they could have been anywhere.
Oh.
Like I'm so involved in the character that I forget that they do need to be somewhere. So just because you're character driven doesn't mean you get to forget about everything else. And that tendency. That's one of the problems I have. And then another problem that I have is what my editor calls wandering in the woods. So I am telling this story and I'm not giving the reader any kind of foreshadowing about what's to come.
Okay.
And she said, you've got to let people know where they're going to stop reading. And it's like, okay. Then I always have to go back and figure out some way to foreshadow earlier than I do naturally.
Oh, I like those examples. So on the first one, I have subscribed to Masterclass. That is, it's an expensive service. And so that was my Christmas gift to myself. But Dan Brown, so Margaret Atwood is, and she's
Yeah.
phenomenal, but she's very, she's highly intelligent, very well read. But Dan Brown breaks it down to like the nuts and bolts of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about when he wrote like Origin and Angels and Demons, Da Vinci Code, he writes what he knows. And so he will describe Spain or he'll describe Italy or all these places. And he says, so you're only there.
Right.
And I thought for us, that tend to be a little bit more like enigmatic, where we can kind of, I was like, oh, okay, let me make notes, like I need to set it. And then when I set that scene, deep in that scene, start Googling, places. And he even talks about like the smell or the temperature, and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is the good stuff.
Right. And for me, I think some authors, for my way of reading, for what I enjoy reading, they go into it. I don't want 3 pages of what the wallpaper looked like. Like that makes me crazy. And then I skip, and I'm kind of like skim. There we are, back to the people. Good, let's read. And so I don't want it. You can take it too far. You can go too far one way or the other. And so for me, it's more of I need to remember that my readers, they want to know where we are and that it is important to the story. If it wasn't, I could have said it absolutely anywhere, and that's not true. So I'm getting better at it because now I recognize, okay, in fact, my latest book, it just came out in January, so it's number 3. And I had someone give me a review that said, Teri put us right into the Appalachian Mountains. I felt like I was there. And I thought, yee, I did it.
Well, yeah, I think one of the people, Elle Meredith, listening, she's an author too. And she's like, yeah, Dan Brown is very specific. You have to be prepared to read his books because you're right. Like, you know, and it depends on what you read. Or some people just like that immersive experience, and they're like, I want to smell the smell in Spain. And then other people are more dialogue heavy, you know, like they want to just get to the dialogue. They're not so much in the rich details.
I don't mind rich detail. I tend to be a little more sparse. Like give you a good feel for what this place is like through just a paragraph or two.
Yeah.
And then maybe have little flakes of it here and there throughout the rest of the book so that you do get it, but that it isn't page after page after page after. That's really difficult for me to read. And if I'm with my book, then I don't want to put it out there. But that doesn't mean that it's and it doesn't mean that it's the right way or the wrong way, because there are different readers who like it different ways. So, yeah.
No, I tend to write very introspective. So I write first person present tense, and I want people to be like conflicted. You are her, and you will feel what she feels, and then your back is against the wall. What are you going to do?
Right.
But I do have some people are like, it's too much introspective. Like I'm more, you know, I just want quick dialogue and witty dialogue. And, you know, it is hard. Like, how do you as an author balance all these elements between description, banter, dialogue? You said the foreshadowing, you have to go back and sprinkle in.
Right. I think what I do, my method is, first of all, I'm a pantser, so I do not outline. I rarely know where my book is going next. I'm just writing until all of a sudden it makes sense to me and I know where I'm going. I tend to get a first draft out and then I leave it alone for several weeks and I pull it back up, and that's when I start making decisions about, do I have enough? Don't I have enough? What do I need more of? I wandered in the woods too long. I start making those decisions that way because it's just, I've tried writing from an outline. It doesn't work for me. It's like the outline part of my brain is not the creative part of my brain. So if I make an outline, there's nothing creative in it. It doesn't feel like writing to me. So I just write. And then I go back and you have to fix things. I mean, obviously, if you just write and you had no plan, there are going to be gaps and holes and pieces and things. But I don't mind that process once I've got the book out of my head.
Yeah, fellow pantsers unite. I have to let the books sit for a while. I know, because I think when you write a book, you may feel pretty good about it, right? And then you set it aside and you come back later and you're like, what is this?
Oh, what was I thinking? Right.
Yeah. And I think foreshadowing, pacing, tension, those are like the subtle things. Like you can identify a plot hole or an inconsistency pretty quickly.
Right.
But it's that underlying magic of when you are a pantser, because I'm a pantser as well. I'm trying to be a better plotter. I have a beat sheet, but geez, me and my editor always talk about it, because I was like, I cannot stay. I'm like, here's the plan, and this is what I'm writing. And then she gets a book that's totally different.
Well, and so here's my problem. I say, this is the plan, and here's what, and all of my characters line up against the wall with their arms crossed, and they just stand there and they say, we refuse to be part of this outline of yours. And when you're ready to actually write, let us know. And they just stand over there and refuse to participate. And it's like, oh, and finally when I give in and say, fine, what do you want to do? The story just starts, running out of me. So I know it sounds crazy, like I've got, I do. I have people in my head, and they refuse to follow my outline. But I think it's because my outline was created from this very rigid me who makes lists in order to get through her day. And yet the creative side of me is like, I don't even want an outline. So it's really weird. Like, I'm not the same person. If you see me grocery shop, you see me do anything around my house, I have lists. I know what I'm going to do, when I'm going to do it, how I'm going to do it. I'm very organized. Everything is just so, it's just got to be that way. I have too many things going on. I just have to be that way. But when I tell people it's like word vomit. It just, like whatever comes out is just, there it is. And it's crazy to me that I'm that different when I write versus pretty much everything else in my life.
Okay, Teri, I love that analogy that they just stand with their back against the wall.
They do. I mean, I can actually see them standing there tapping their feet, like, let me know when you're done.
Oh my God.
You know.
That's such a creative analogy. I love it. So, where does your inspiration come from then?
So from everyday life, like the smallest thing can get me thinking about something else. Um, for my newest book, Daughters of Green Mountain Gap, it all started because I had a wart on my thumb.
A wart.
A
W-A-R-T.
wart. Yeah, a
Okay,
wart.
you got to unpack that a little bit
Yeah.
for us.
Okay. Okay. So I had a wart on my thumb. I went to my primary care doctor for just a regular physical. And while I was there, I said, hey, can you go ahead and just like burn this little thing right off? Oh no, she says, we're going to have to take you to a specialist. I'm not going to a specialist over a wart. So I just went to like the CVS or something, got one of those patches, the thing fell off, no big deal. But I was talking to my brother a couple weeks later about how the primary care doctors were kind of ticking me off because they used to do everything in office and now they do nothing. Like everything that's the matter with you, they have to send you off somewhere.
Yeah.
And I told him about my wart. And he said, why didn't you get someone to talk it off?
What?
And I said, what? That's exactly. I said, what? And he said, yeah. Why didn't you get someone to talk it off? I've got a buddy that talks off warts. Well, I wasn't going to fall for this because
Yeah.
I'm the gullible one in my family, okay? Like the gullible one. And so they tell me stories, and then every Christmas for the next 20 years, I hear about, you remember that time we told Teri? And so I just knew that's what
Yeah.
this was, and I just kind of let it go and ignored him. But I have a problem. It's called being a research junkie, and I can't let something like that go. So when we got off the phone, I'm going to look it up so that at least I know for a fact that he's just, pulling my leg. Guess what? There are people who talk off warts. They literally talk to your wart, and within the week, it's gone.
Okay, that's got to be one of the silliest things I've ever heard.
Okay. So I started doing more research because it was like, well, what else do they do? Well, there are people who can do things like talk to a baby who's breech and get the baby to flip just by talking, just their the way they use their voice. And there are people that can get rid of thrush by blowing in your mouth, and it just goes on and on. Well, this led me into the healing practices in the mountains of North Carolina, and these women are known as granny women. And as soon as I started delving into the granny women, Maggie, my mind just went crazy. Maggie was born, and she's just living in my head telling me this story, and that's where this whole thing came from. So I get my inspiration from dumb little everyday things that happen in life, and I either is a question that I have, so I look something up, and whatever the answer is exciting to me, or something that happens, and I wonder, well, what would happen if that happened at a later time, or in an earlier time, or with a person, or and as I start asking those kinds of questions about everyday normal life, like a wart, next thing you know, I have a story.
That is so funny. So, so basically, you're saying this war then comes into like what if scenarios, like what if it happened in the 1800s, and what if they don't have a.
What if they don't have CVS?
Mm-hmm.
And what other things would someone who could talk off a wart, what could they do? And how would that look? And where would they get their knowledge from? And like, does it pass down from family member to family member? Is it? And so I just started like really getting into the whole granny woman thing. And I tell people being a granny woman is kind of like herbs and roots, and then this little bit of mountain magic. There's this belief that they have the ability, and the people who come to them believe they have this ability, and then poof, they're healed. And I don't even know that it had anything to do with the roots and the herbs. It's almost like because I believe it and you believe it, it's going to happen.
The placebo effect.
Yes, exactly. And no one's been able to explain that scientifically, but we've seen it scientifically. You can give someone a sugar pill and they will claim that their pain is because you told them it was a pain pill. So something goes on in our minds. I believe that our brain and our body want very much to be healthy and whole and healed. And so if you believe that you're going to be, maybe you just unlock your body's ability to do what it needs to do.
Well, they say the gut has more nerve endings than the brain. And so when people discount the mind body connection, it's why do we
Right.
get anxiety? Where do you get anxiety? That fight or flight. It's a defense mechanism. It's in your gut.
Exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
and about having a gut feeling,
Yep.
There's a reason that we say, like listen to your gut.
Yeah.
Why do we say that? Well, it's because there is something there. We all know that we get sensation and pain and discomfort and even elation, in our stomach. We get butterflies in our stomach and we those things, right? And so, I'm not saying that there isn't a need for modern medicine or there's nothing like that. But I just believe that our bodies have the ability to heal way more than we understand it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
somehow these granny women have the ability to tap into it. And I think it's just a strong belief. They believe they can do it. And those seeking their help believe they can do it. And that all by itself creates magic. It's magic.
Well, it reminds me, Outlander, obviously everybody has seen it. And so, you could call it a time travel book series, or you could call it she's a healer. And
She
it really is
is. She
her journey as a healer, both as a doctor in modern day and a healer back then. But everybody's like, it's a love story, it's Jamie, it's time travel, it's this, and you're like, it's fundamentally, she's like, it's about a woman who's a healer.
right. And it really is. And when you look at it, I think that, let's look at like the Salem witch trials. A lot of those women who were, being convicted of being witches,
Mm-hmm.
maybe healers. Maybe they just had that sixth sense that they kind of knew what needed to be done to make people better or to do things like our brains. We just had so much more power in there than we understand. So anyway, that's where I kind of come up with things. It's just like, what if, what if, what if? Um, yeah.
Okay, what about the inspiration for your debut novel?
Okay, so Sunflowers Beneath
I
the Snow
love
is
that
about,
title.
thank you. It's about three generations of Ukrainian women. And what's crazy about this book is that it came out 4 weeks before the current Ukrainian crisis.
Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh. And I named it Sunflowers Beneath the Snow before anyone knew that sunflowers had anything to do with Ukraine. It was absolutely, the timing was
Clandestine.
just, yeah, like bizarre. Like just, I can't even explain how crazy that was. My daughters have a friend who is Ukrainian, and she told me in 2016, she told me this incredible story. Um, and it was so incredible that I thought that needs to be a book or a movie or something. And I wasn't in a place that I was writing at that point. I was in an abusive relationship, and I couldn't be creative. There wasn't anything there
I'm
for
so
me. Um,
sorry. That's
yeah,
very challenging, very
yeah,
difficult.
it is. But when I got out of that relationship, which I did, I started writing. And in 2018, I wrote this story. But I tell everyone that I wrote 82,000 words of fiction to tell 3 pages of truth. So the last 3 pages of the last chapter are true. Not the epilogue, but the last chapter are true. And everything else is just my imagination as to how could we have reached that
How do we
point.
get here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in my second book, An Enemy Like Me, It came from something my grandfather told me. I'm of German American heritage, but our family's been in the United States since the 1700s. My grandfather fought in World War II, and he fought in Germany.
Wow.
And he said to me one time, he rarely spoke of the war. It was just not something
They
people
don't
did.
know. Silent generation, no.
He just didn't say a thing. But one time, I was a teenager, he said to me, I always wondered if the person on the other side of the gun was a cousin.
Wow.
And
That's so
that,
powerful.
yes. And so An Enemy Like Me is about a first generation German American. His parents were born in Germany. He was born in the United States. He goes to fight in World War II. He believes he's going to fight the Japanese, and he ends up in Germany. And he realizes he's more like the enemy than he is different from the enemy. And we look at that story from his point of view, but also from his wife and his 4-year-old son.
Wow, Teri, you really pick tough topics to write about.
Yeah, I never go easy.
You're like, I'm not going to shy away from them.
Yeah, I like to look at aspects of life that are happening now and couch them in a way that people can read and start to experience things that are maybe uncomfortable, but they're not as uncomfortable when they're, I don't know, like in the past, or they're about someone that's not you, or nobody is going to question you as you're reading. You get to experience in all three of those, in all three of my books so far, it's either like racism or xenophobia, and you get to kind of like look at that from very different perspectives and start to think about like, where are your own feelings, and are they, and do they need any tweaking? And I don't know, I just like that ability. I don't think that there's anything that happened in the past in terms of people that isn't happening today in some form. We haven't progressed that far. You know, there's still racism, there's still sexism, there's still, these things have been going on forever, and they're going to keep going on. And so we need to talk about them. And so if you put them into literature, it makes them approachable. It's very difficult to have a conversation in today's world, especially about something as sensitive as, say, racism. But if you put something in a book, it now becomes approachable because it isn't about you and whoever you're talking to. It's about this character in the book. And so now you can have a discussion that you couldn't have before. And even if you never discussed the book out loud, you've discussed it in your head. You've thought about it. You've been in the place of that person, even if momentarily.
That's a powerful viewpoint, though, because you're right, history does repeat itself. We have dictatorship over and over and over
Right.
around
I
the
mean,
globe.
it doesn't go away. People say to me all the time, "Well, your book, although it's historical fiction, it just fits
Yes,
today."
relevant
And so
now.
I'm just like, well, yeah, because as humans, we haven't progressed as much as we think we have. You know, we have in technology, and we have in medicine, and we have, but in terms of how we deal with one another,
Yeah.
you know, families still are families. They still love one another and still hate one another all at the same time. There's still the crazy uncle. There's still, you know, the mother-daughter struggles. There's still the father-son struggles. There's still, those still happen. And so when you explore them in a book, even if it's in the past, or even if it's a fantasy, it doesn't even really exist, it does exist because these characters are going through the same kinds of things that your reader actually goes through, or watches a friend go through, or a sibling go through, or whatever.
No, I agree with you. Somehow, I feel like mankind is as divisive as we've ever been. And I had once said that to my mother, who's since passed, and she's like, honey, it's always been that way.
Yeah.
Humans find different ways to categorize and segregate and separate. And she said, I don't know if that problem will ever be solved. She says it could be, race, religion, ethnicity, nationality. And you're thinking like, geez, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all mankind. We're all humankind.
I think that it probably started, you know, billion years ago kind of thing, when you had to stay with people who were like you for safety reasons. And so people who were different, things that were different, were scary, unknown, unsafe. And so you clustered together in groups.
Well, hunter
we do it very
gatherer, right? I mean, we're
right.
all the way. Mm-hmm.
We do this very naturally. I mean, we do it. If you go to any gathering with like a big group of women, there are certain women who sit together at the tables together. You know, you put up 8 tables and you can almost guarantee who's going to sit together. It's not that they hate the other people. It's that they're more comfortable with the people at their table. And we find reasons to be more comfortable with one another, but we also find reasons to be uncomfortable with one another. And so, like you said, it could be race, it could be religion, it could be nationality, it could be political affiliation, it could be sexual orientation, it could be, you know, she wears lipstick, I don't. It literally could be anything. And
I love that. You just said we find reasons to be uncomfortable with people.
we do. We do. How else do we create us and them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we do. And we do it so that we have our people. We know who our people are. And if we have our people, then anyone who's not our people has to be a them. Well, why do they make me uncomfortable? It's their skin color, or it's their religion, or it's, you know, she always makes sure that she looks good when she goes out, and I'll just go out in a messy bun. It can literally be anything.
Yeah. No, that's so profound because you're right. We, in our sense, our basic human need to belong, to be accepted, that's what we're doing. So we also, in one stroke, you're undermining what you're trying to achieve.
Right, right. And you don't even recognize that's what you're doing.
And the,
You know,
I was to say the dichotomy between them.
right. And so I try to let my books explore those kinds of things, just those ideas. If you think about it even briefly when reading the book, then I've done my job. Like, it opened your eyes, at least momentarily, to something different that made you think, that made you say, oh, I can't believe that character did that. And maybe that will make you say, but wait, I did something very similar just yesterday.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it raises the awareness of what our own behavior is.
Exactly. Exactly.
How fascinating. So let me ask you this, since these books delve into such serious and deep, like really profound topics, how long does it take you typically to get through a first draft?
So I told you I do word vomit. I also tell people that I'm a binge writer. So if I get a story in my head and I know it's time to come out, like I've been contemplating and thinking and whatever, if I can get away from my home and go to like a writer's retreat, I can get 50 to 60,000 words out in 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh, that's stunning.
That doesn't mean the book is done. That is the first ugly draft. That is, I've got the story out. Now I have to go back and figure out where are the holes. I didn't foreshadow. You don't even know where we are until chapter 7. All these things, right? And I have to go back and fix all of that. But I get the story out of my head so that I can then now go back and fix it.
And you do hear some of the, famous authors say, write as fast as you can and don't worry about research and don't worry about connecting to the internet and looking that up. Just get it all out and then you can fix it afterwards. And so, I mean, 60,000 words in 2 weeks is phenomenal. Are you writing? Do you dictate?
No, I type. I'm an extremely fast typist.
Oh, wow.
Or I guess keyboarder. No one types anymore. I'm showing my age.
We knew what you meant.
I took typing classes, if that explains anything to anyone. But no, I can't handwrite because I think faster than I can write it out, and my handwriting is poor. And so if I'm writing really fast, then it's really poor, and then I can't read anything I wrote, and I have to go back and decipher it all. It's horrible. And I don't
not take typing classes. I wish I did. I am the slowest typer in the world.
No, I type anywhere between 70 and 100 words a minute, and it's just yeah. It depends on what I'm doing as to whether it's 70 or 100. But for instance, today, so I'm not able right now to go 2-week retreat. My husband is sick and he has cancer. and I'm not able to
Teri, I'm
just
so
go away.
sorry.
I don't know, because it stinks because I finally have a great husband. But anyway,
Bless your heart.
it's the way, it's just life. It's just the way life is. But I can't get away right now. Um, but I now have someone who comes in 6 hours a week on Thursdays.
Okay.
And I went to the library today. I had other things to do, but I went to the library today. And in 2 hours, I wrote 2,000 words.
That's wonderful.
So that's kind of like I sit and just until I get. Now, like I said, it's not pretty. It's not like I would show you those 2,000 words.
Yeah.
But it moved my story forward. And I kind of know what I want to write next. And once I get this story out of my head, then I will go back and do all of the fixing parts.
The rewrites. So you will write the first draft and then you go into the second draft. How long does the second draft? I mean, if you're able to get, granted now your writing space and discipline is looks a little bit different now. On that second round, how long or how many rounds do you usually do before you can get to a somewhat finished product?
So I go the second round, need fixing things that are extremely obvious. I'm often taking notes, so I do keep a notepad with a pen next to me so that when I'm typing, if I realize, wait a minute, for this to happen somewhere earlier in the book, I need to say, I will write down whatever chapter I'm on, added this scene, make sure you add such and so. So I will have this list of notes, kind of remind me, oh yeah, I need to talk about the fact that she had an Italian grandfather. It's important, and so I think, okay, so I go through those notes and I say, where can I add these things?
So let me stop right there, Teri. When you're doing this binge writing, at the same time, you're also keeping a notepad.
Right.
Because as a discovery writer, as a pantser, you learn things. And so not only are you binge writing, but you're also having a notepad to add your rewrites.
Right. But it's cryptic. It's not, I don't write, there's no paragraphs over there. It's just, add something about Italian grandfather prior to chapter 13, that kind of thing.
But that is helpful for other people that are writing, just
okay.
It doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be complicated, but this is your method that works for you, and it may work for someone else.
For me, what it does is, I'm going along and I realize, oh, I know how to fix this thing, like I've got myself here and I need to get there and I can fix that with this. But the only way that's going to work is if somehow I brought that up earlier. I'm not going to go back at this point and go fix that, because then now I get into editing. And editing for me and writing are two totally different
brains.
Yes. Totally. So I make that list. So then I go back through and I go through that list and I fix what I knew originally. Like these are the things. Then I read it again. Now when I'm reading it, I'm starting to think like my editor. Okay, am I wandering in the woods? Did I give a good this? Do I have enough? And then, so I'm doing all of that. So now I've written it and I've gone through twice. I always put it through, I use autocrit.
Yeah.
So it's,
those that don't know, explain what autocrit is.
So autocrit, you can put your manuscript in and it comes back and it tells you things about your manuscript. Like, are you using enough variety in your words? Are your words considered weak words? Like, how many times did you say good or bad or pretty instead of something like, beautiful? Like you need to.
I always felt like zhuzh up. I'm gonna zhuzh up my.
Yes,
description.
And you have to be careful when using something like autocrit, because you can get that feeling like you should open up a thesaurus and start throwing words in there, and that's not what they mean. But you want to just be sure that like you didn't use the same word 16 times in one paragraph. Like you're kind of going through it that way, and it's not perfect. Sometimes it will suggest that you make changes and it's like, yeah, you don't even understand what the sentence is. You know, it's definitely a machine, but it
Yeah.
does help me see where some of my big problems are, and I go ahead and fix those. And once I'm done with that, then I give it to an actual editor who can help me see what I'm not going to be able to see on my own.
Hmm. That's great. Okay, so you go through several rounds, you write it,
Yeah,
several drafts, goes into auto crit to zhuzh it up,
right.
and then it goes to human. And I know a lot of people think AI can replace human editors, but it really
No.
cannot. I mean,
So autocrit has helped me tremendously. It really does make me think about, you're using too many adverbs and you're using, these kinds of things. And so I can go back through and say, okay, highlight all of those for me. And I can look at them and say, which ones of these don't I really need?
right.
I have the tendency to use the word that
I
all
think
the time.
we all have filler words.
That, that. I say that so many times that by the time I get rid of all the that's I don't need, my book is about, 20% smaller. I just have so many that's. So that it gets rid of those kinds of things for me so that my editor, my human editor, doesn't have to focus on that kind of crap.
Mm-hmm.
She can say things to me like, this character that you have here that you're considering a major character doesn't have much of an arc.
Oh, yeah.
And that's way more important than using too many
Well,
that's. I want,
you're
I
the
want her,
reader.
I want her to, right. I need her to point out things that aren't obvious to me. That character in my mind had a beautiful arc because he lives in my head and I know him,
Exactly. But readers will
right?
pick that out. If you don't have a deep enough emotional arc, yeah.
Right. And so that's what I want from an editor. I want to do the piddly work on my own. I can do that. And then I usually do get a proofreader because I'm constantly reading what I think I wrote instead of what I actually wrote. And so a proofreader is good. But if you've gone through this process several times, you caught a lot of that. And now what you're giving to the humans is something that they can clean up versus my crappy first draft, which, yeah, I mean,
You,
nobody needs to see that.
as an author, we do go through our manuscripts so much, you get blind to you just get, I don't know how it happens, and every author I know, they're like, I just get blind to my own edits.
You don't even see it. It just, and the other thing that happens to me is people have said, well, you just have to you read one sentence at a time, and that's how you do it. I can't. I end up getting into the story and now I'm reading the story. Despite
I do
having
that
written
too.
it, I'm now reading it and it's like, crap, where did I stop paying attention? Because now I'm off with Maggie and I've totally forgotten that what I'm trying to do here is edit. Yeah.
I try and have Microsoft, you know how they have read aloud,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna bash Microsoft. They have literally the worst computer voices ever.
Awful. It is so monotonous. It just like grates on every nerve
And
I own.
I thought, okay, well, if I'm listening along, I'll catch my mistakes. That's wrong, because it is just like da, 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 da. It's the bouncing ball on the word, right?
It's
You can't
horrible.
hear it.
No, no, and there's no punctuation. You can't. It's awful. Whew.
Oh, I was trying to hack it, but it did not. It's not hackable.
Yeah.
So this fourth book that you're working on, can you tell us the idea or the inspiration, or without spoilers?
Yeah, I can. So I don't know like what age your audience is, but when I was a preteen, everyone read "Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret" by Judy Blume.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the book where the girls are going, anticipating puberty, right? And
Yeah.
like they're waiting for boobs to grow and
Yeah.
all the things, right?
Called it the period book when we were
Yeah,
in school.
exactly. So I read this book, oh, I don't know, a bazillion times as a preteen. Fast forward, they turned it into a movie. But while they were considering turning it into a movie a couple of years ago, I must have read an article or a interview or something, and my question in my head was, I wonder whatever happened to Margaret. And
Oh.
immediately the answer was, she now goes by Peg and she's going through menopause.
Okay. Is that your inspiration?
Yes. And so I have Peg, who is recently separated, and she's dealing with hot flashes while trying to be on an online dating site. And she loses her job because she loses her mind in the office and those kinds of things. And it's a funny, kind of a funny look at what all women have to go through. And so it's kind of tongue in cheek and it's got a lot of humor and there's a little side to romance, but it's not a rom-com because it doesn't follow the trope. But there is a lot of romance in there. And yeah, it's just a funny, I don't even know where it, I don't know. I've written, so I have about 30,000 words now. And I have a friend who has read most of them, and she said, Teri, I love it. I love it. And it's like, it's so different than anything that I've written.
Oh.
But I don't know. I just like, I like the challenge. And once again, it's so different. You know, like I said, it's first person, it's funny. She has a very distinctive voice in terms of like her sense of humor has, you know, like an edge of sarcasm to it and that kind of thing. Like you can feel her rolling her eyes. So
Would it fall under single women fiction? I think that's a category in Amazon.
so, so single women fiction, it might even be just considered women's
Mm.
fiction. I suspect that it would go maybe into a beach read category.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's that's something that I don't do. I do not write to a genre.
Mhm.
I write my, and then when it's done, I look and figure out what genre it goes into. Because I don't write by a formula. I write the story that's in my head, and then when it's out, I have to determine, okay, now where
Yeah.
does it belong?
Where's
And
it on the bookshelf?
so, with Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, it ended up in historical fiction, despite the fact that it's the 1970s, which like blew my mind, by the way, because I was born in 1963. So the fact that I'm historical just really irks me a little. But that's where they put that story, and yet really know that that's where it is. And then An Enemy Like Me, they put historical because it's World War II, but half of the book is in present day. So it's a dual time. Where does it really fit? So yeah, I just write the story and then just figure out what genre Amazon wants it in.
Well, and too, we all don't know that you pick your category, but we don't know how the algorithm works because I have one of mine that's in like he is uh of partial Japanese descent, and so they put it into Japanese literature.
Right. And you're like, what? Yeah. Sometimes people would look at what category it's trending in or whatever, and it's like, huh, okay then. Yeah. I just don't worry too much about it, which is one of the reasons why I say I'm a character driven fiction author, because I don't know what genre I am. I don't really fit a box. I've never fit boxes. I don't like boxes and I don't like people putting me in them. So
So that fits.
yeah. And then it got worse after, you know, I was in this abusive relationship for 14 years before I finally got
Oh
out of that.
my
And
gosh, Terry.
since then, it's like, oh no, nobody gets to tell me what to do. Like,
Rightfully so. Rightfully so.
so people will say things like, well, you know, or I'll hear, I'll be on a like a writers group of some kind, and someone will make a comment like, well, you're not allowed to, and then gives thing, and I think, watch me. I just don't like that. I hate hearing you're not allowed to, or new authors asking, am I allowed to? And it's like, yes, you are. It's your book. It's
Yeah, you're an indie when you're an indie author, you call the shots. You write whatever you want. And that's the beauty of it.
you get to write. And then you also though get to live with the consequences,
Oh yeah.
which means that maybe it didn't work and maybe no one will want to read it. But that's okay. You learned something, you can go from there. I don't like the you can't or you should never. The other thing is when you find those that you should or you should never, you can find another article somewhere that says just the opposite.
Oh yeah. I feel like I've been told not allowed to do stuff my whole life. But women battle that, we're not too far apart where it's like play small, don't stand out, and just blend in, dress like the job you want, not the one you have. I mean, there's just so much of that garbage out there.
Instead of just be you, be authentic, show the world who you are. So yeah, there's one in particular, I've been told that you should never use a dialogue tag unless it's said or asked, nothing else. And then there's another school of thought that's dialogue tags are the thing that can help drive forward your dialogue so that people understand. Are they angry? Are they happy? Are they elated? Are they whatever? Yeah. And it's like, and you can find good sources, reputable sources that one says one and one says the other. So which is true? Neither is true. You do what works for you. You do what works for your book. You do what works for your readers. That's what you do.
I agree with you on that. Some of it as a writer is finding your own voice. I've been through quite the team to try and help me find my editors. And when you don't have an editor or a team that believes in you, it can be a real rub.
Yeah.
And so I've heard that, like, oh, you're using too much descriptive dialogue tags. And I try to not use, I'm replacing my dialogue tags with action beats.
Right.
Just because I like to read that. I prefer that rather than, all these. But I haven't totally eliminated dialogue tags.
Right.
But I'm not said all the way. I won't do it. I think it's too monotonous. I can't stand it.
I just think that, I don't know, rules are there to be broken. Like maybe there's some general guidelines that help move a book along, but there's always exceptions. Maybe said is better than all of these other expressions if you have too many of them. I've read books before where every dialogue tag, and there's lots of them, are different, and you begin to think, you dipped into the thesaurus and you threw it out there. What happened? And so it can be bad, but on the other hand, like you said, if all it is said, you can overuse that too.
Oh yeah. Well,
so
and that's where
it's bad.
Part of working on a writing craft is what you like and what you want to do. And as an indie, you have total control. If you're traditionally published, you don't. And so I think a lot of us is like, do you want to win awards and do you want to satisfy the critics, or do you want to have a target audience that loves your work and they'll buy the next book every time?
Right.
I'm convinced you almost can't have both, because if you make the critics happy, then your readers are like, this is kind of a flat read.
Right. Right. And I'm, I've had people say to me, like, do you want to be on the New York Times bestseller? And I said, well, yeah, who wouldn't? But on the other hand, do I really? I don't know, because then is that book me anymore? I'm not sure it would be, because in order to get there, I have to be something I'm not and write something that I'm not.
I've had editors, my first round of my editing team, they're like, you can't do this. And I'm like, but I have to do that. That's just like, that's, critical. It's like literally the culmination of her journey and it has to happen. They're like, you can't do it. Readers will hate it. And I'm just like, but that's the story.
It is. Yeah. So this is something that bothers me, really, really bothers me. I want you to imagine that instead of a writer, you are a painter. And you have painted this beautiful landscape. And you go take it to a gallery. And the gallery owner says, oh, I love this landscape, but I want you to take all of the blues and change them to green. No painter in their right mind is going to do that. They're going to tell that person where to go, and they're going to move on. And yet, as a writer, we're like, oh, okay, I'll change all of the blues to green to suit you. No. Why is the writing craft one of the few that I know in the creative world that people tell you you can't do it that way?
Mm-hmm.
The only way that you're going to get published, the only way you get to be out there in the world is if you do what I
Yeah.
want. You have to change your ending. You have to get rid of characters. You have to do whatever. And I think no one would tell a painter that.
No. And some of the traditional books, just like some of these movies that come out and you see on the Oscars, you're like, I don't get it. There's just not that much storyline there, but everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's critically acclaimed. And you're like, am I the only one that's thinking like there's a lot
Like,
left? Like there's no story. I thought it was going to be a tearjerker and not really crying. I feel like a lot of the story and the emotion gets stripped away.
taken right out of it. And so, yeah, you look at it and think, yeah, I mean, it was passable.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, throw your hands up over your head and like, oh my gosh, no. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think when I first got started, I really wanted to be traditionally published because, like, I don't know, that just said something. It meant something. And the more I got into it and realized what it actually meant, the more I didn't want it. I didn't want someone who took my book from me, who now owns my book. I don't own it anymore because they own it. And they get to determine what happens to it, and they get to choose the cover, and little old me who wrote it gets nothing. That I don't like that. And so, and not only that, but just the timing, the amount of time. I'm a 60-year-old woman. I don't have 10 years to throw around with literary agents trying to find the right publisher who then takes 3 years to get it out there. I don't want to do that. So indie was exactly perfect for me.
Well, you have so many stories to tell. And so you're like, I can't wait around for you to
Oh,
decide to put it out because in the 2 years, I may put out 2 or 4 books.
right, right. I mean, I've been putting out one a year, and that's even with my husband. And so it's like, I don't want I don't want to be backed up where I've got 6 books ready to go out, but none of them are even going to come out until 2028. Like, are you crazy? Why are we doing this? And it's like an old system that hasn't realized that technology has changed so that they don't have to do it
I
that way anymore.
was just about to say it because it's like indie authors and that community has grown so much because it's just like the gatekeeping is the old way. We don't want to do it anymore. And so we're not. I have one book where I killed the dog, and everybody's like, you can't kill an animal. And I was like, you would understand if you read the whole book. Yeah.
Right, right, right. So in an enemy like me, I have a dog that dies. Now I didn't kill the dog, but the dog does die. It's natural causes. It's nothing. And I have had people say, "Oh, I can't believe you killed the dog." And it's like, I didn't. Dogs die. Like, it happens. And they said, why would you do that? And it's like, because that's what the story needed.
I
People
I
die.
had foreshadowed really, really well to prepare people. But, if you've ever had a dog, they will protect you to the ends of the earth. And so that's literally how this came. And so people were like, that, you broke my heart. I get why that happened. But I have another series that I'll eventually write. Well, I have it written, but I need to be a much better writer before I produce it. And my main character is going to die.
Right. Well, and so, I have characters that die, and I have pretty main characters that die. And,
Huge no no.
well, tough. They have to do it because without it, the story doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
And so I try to ignore those rules. Like, don't start with the weather, and don't. Well, what if starting with the hurricane is exactly what you need to do?
Oh, yeah. I was trying to think. There's an author who always writes about the weather. Golly, it was at the tip of my mind, and now I can't remember. But there was an author who always starts with the weather.
Right. And so it's like, what do you mean don't start with it? Oh, never start with the weather. Never do this. Never do that. And it's like, don't tell me what to do. I have a story to write, and I'm going to get it out, and I'm going to do it in my voice. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to do my very best editing, and I'm going to bring an editor on board who understands me and my voice and is going to help me make my voice better. And if I start with the weather, it's because that's what needed to be done.
Evie, I love it. People happen, pets die, people get pregnant, bad sex.
I mean, it's real life, and that's what I write. My characters are real. They're even I have a fantasy character in mind. I've written part of the manuscript. I don't know where it's going to go or if it will go because I'm not real sure. I don't know that I can write it yet, and so maybe it's one that I'll hold on to and write later.
Yeah.
But even in that, even with that character, they're real. If that makes sense. Like they have real feelings, real emotions. You get really involved with them. And real people have real problems with real issues, with dogs who die. And like someone said, bad sex happens. I mean, that's right. It's real. And if you have
Life isn't always pretty. It doesn't give you rainbows and roses.
no, and so if that's what people want to read, then I mean, fine. I'm sure there are authors who do it, but those characters are flat. How do you ever get involved, become a character who is perfect and their whole life is perfect and everything happens beautifully and no one ever dies and we all sing kumbaya and you know toot rainbows. It just doesn't make sense to me.
That's a
So
boring read.
yeah.
So let me ask you this. What do you think is the hardest part to being an author, an indie author, and what's the easiest?
I think the hardest part is the marketing. You know, trying to figure out like how do you get yourself out there in public and get to be known. When I wrote my first book, nobody knew me. So I'd come from a bad relationship. I started writing, but I didn't let anyone know because I was terrified. I mean, it was like no one could know I was doing this thing. And when I finally got the book and now I'm getting it out there, I mean, I had neighbors that didn't even know I wrote. I was very, very quiet about everything. And now I've got a book and it's not selling. Well, why isn't it selling? Because nobody even knows it's written. I mean, you know, and so I had to figure out the whole marketing aspect and realize that in order to be an indie author, you cannot just write. You
Yeah.
have to market. Or you have to hire people who are going to market, but they're going to have to do it in more than, oh, we're going to put your book up on Facebook. It doesn't work. You need more than that.
Yeah.
You know,
It's hard.
there are people who will say, you know, for $50, I'll put your book out on Twitter 300 times this month. Well, good for you. It's not going to do anything. You know, you have to know like what's going to work for you and you have to work at it every day. But you can't do it to the detriment of your writing because then you might have great marketing, but if you haven't written anything, what good does it do you? You have to figure out all that balance. So I think that's the hardest part. And then for me, the easiest part is just coming up with ideas. I have an idea file that is so big that I don't have enough years left of my life to write them all.
Okay, well, don't say that because we're going to have you live forever.
Okay. Okay. So apparently,
I think that you get some years back from that abusive
okay,
relationship. You're like, I deserve 14 years back.
I think that would be awesome. But I always tell people that I wouldn't wish that on anyone and I wouldn't want to relive it. However, I am the person I am from having been through
You're
that.
strong,
And I think
a survivor.
right and the writing that I do reflects strong emotion because I know that emotion. And so I know I can tap into things that maybe other people can't tap into because I've experienced things that other people haven't. So I just take that to be this was something in my life that happened and rather than wallow in it, I'm just going to take it and use it. I mean, I'm going to use it. And I've never written about an abusive relationship, but there are a lot of feelings that happen in those kinds of relationships, and you can tap into that and really bring that into your characters.
I'm sure because that's one of the worst things of humanity. You know, abuse of any kind, whether it be in a spousal relationship or a child parent. It's one of the most
Right.
horrific things that is just mind-numbingly hard to understand.
Right. And the other thing is that having been in that relationship, I also understand like prior to ever being in a relationship like that, I was the person who said, well, why don't they just walk away?
Oh, yeah.
Like, why don't they just walk away?
Decide
And
that all
I
the
did,
time.
right. And I didn't mean it even that negatively as much as I truly did not understand. Well, having lived in it, I now understand, and I have a different empathy. And that empathy can also come out in my books, where you see my characters doing things and having empathy for someone else in a way that it's because I understand now. I understand people do the best that they can, and sometimes that isn't the option, or they don't see it as one.
Well,
It,
and the manipulation can be
oh,
so slow to start.
well, you don't even recognize half the time what's going on with you. Like, and it isn't like one day they're
Harming.
and the next day they, it's like boiling a frog. You put them in cold water and you start the fire, and before long the water's boiling, and now they can't get out of the pot. And it's that thing, and you don't even know that it's happening to you. So all of those experiences have worked their way into my writing in terms of the deep emotions and the ability to empathize with other characters and trying to see things from different points of view, and all of that I think is just part of my life experiences.
No, I think that that charm and harm cycle, people
Yeah,
try to boil it down to where it's something quantifiable and they can say, well, why don't you just leave? Well, you don't maybe have the resources, you don't have the options, you don't think you deserve better.
right.
Maybe you don't have anywhere to go with all your children. I mean, domestic violence is such a tough problem to solve unilaterally.
I tell everyone that the best thing that you can do for someone that you believe is being abused is to be there for them, so that when the time comes that they can leave, that they have a support system that will be there to help them. You
Exactly.
force them to go before they're ready. You can't, because what's going to happen? They're going to go back. That's what happens.
Or they do leave and they do go back, and the cycle of charm and harm continues.
That's what I mean. They leave, but 2 weeks later they're back in that relationship again, and it's because they weren't ready. They didn't have themselves ready to do that yet. You have to be in the right spot.
Yeah.
The right things all have to come together. So, yeah,
Yeah, it is tough. It's just something it's so hard to solve.
yeah, it is. It is.
So I know we are past our hour.
Well, are we? Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
No, don't apologize, Terry. It has been wonderful getting to know you, and we're going to have to do this again when your fourth book comes out, because we didn't even scratch the surface on all my questions. You're just so entertaining and just so easy to talk to.
Well, wonderful. I would love to come back on. And I mean, it's been a whole lot of fun. I was a little nervous. I've never done a live Instagram one before, and I thought, I don't even know if I'm going to know how to get on. So, yeah,
Well, thank you
this
for
is
being the inaugural one with me. Okay, but no, for serious, I do have so many more questions I would like to talk to you about. So we will book again and I will catch you in the DMs. But before I let you go, I have rapid fire if you don't mind, because these are always fun. Okay, are you a paperback or an e-reader?
I'd rather use paperback, but I use e-readers a lot.
Well, I'd imagine, because with your husband being sick, God bless his soul, and we wish him all the best in his battle and hopefully a recovery. But I'd imagine it's easier to just take an e-reader to, that chemo, that hospital, that
Yeah.
bedside.
Well, and he also tends to go to bed early, and so I'll go to bed too, and then I'll just put my e-reader on, and then I can read in the dark instead
Yeah,
of trying to.
disturb him. Yeah, that poor man. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
Definitely answer. Like, not even
First person or third? Both.
yes. Third person on the first three books, first person on the current book.
Plot driven or character driven? All the
Character.
way. I know it's even in your title. I love that. Do you write alone, or do you write with a partner, or do you write in writing sprints?
Alone. Very, very much so. I don't even know how you would write with a partner. Like, that boggles my mind.
I am kind of fascinated by that because this co-writing, where like you write a chapter and Gigi writes a chapter back, but I have no clue how that could ever work, but I'm
No,
fascinated by it.
I think it's because I'm such a pantser that I don't imagine you can do that unless you have some kind of a plot line going on. Like, no, no, I'm, yeah, I don't play well with others.
I interviewed this author, and they are both pantsers. And so like one will pants and hand it over and the other one pants. And I was like, what?
Wow.
That
I
blew my
mean,
mind.
I maybe I should like maybe that should be my next challenge, but wow. Yeah, it seems like overwhelming to me.
Teri, you got a lot going on with the husband and your current switching from third to first and also like your new genre. I'll save that for later down the road.
Yeah, that'll be my next one sometime down the line.
Outliner, discovery writer. You said discovery.
Right.
Okay, do you write in silence or do you write with music?
I don't like music, but I don't like silence. I like to sit where real life is going on so that people are walking by, there's little conversations happening, that kind of
So when
noise. So I would, so
when you
like in a,
wrote today, when you wrote today at the library, which is like kids, if it's story time across the library, so you don't have anything covering your ears. You just,
no, just sit there and write.
girl, I need that concentration. Oh my gosh.
Think about those noises that I can block out. Whereas like music, I start to sing to it, so that doesn't do me any good. And silence, oh my gosh, silence makes me crazy. It's like, no, and then I've had people say, well, what about white noise? Oh, white noise actually like hurts me. I can't imagine listening to white noise to fall asleep. I try to make a pattern out of it in my mind. It is horrible. Yeah.
Okay, Matt, respect that you can block out because I tried to write at a library and this couple, like they were speaking French and I was like, oh, what is this? What are they saying? You know, like I took 4 years of French and I speak none of it. I can say I'm going to the pool.
Right.
But I was just so immersed in their like experience and what they were talking about. I was like, what is this? So yeah, I got no words.
Isn't that funny?
That,
Well, everyone has their thing that works for them. And so I would definitely say not everyone can write in a library without their ears covered, and yet some people can. So do what works for you,
I
right?
love that concentration level. I'm envious. Writing with a deadline or at your own pace?
So at my own pace, deadlines kind of make me a little frantic.
Yeah, fair. Series or standalones?
So far, I've done only standalones.
Would you ever write a series?
I don't know. I'm a little worried about a series because I get bored very easily. And so I think I would have to have at least a really good idea of where I wanted that series to go. And I where the breaks were going to be, that they make a lot of sense, and that this story is really an extremely huge, long story that I'm going to break up into 3 books. I just get bored. You know, like I have a friend who writes cozy mysteries, and she's like on book number 8 or 9 with the same characters, and I'm thinking, I mean, I don't mind reading them, but for me as a writer, no, I'd be tired of them. It's like, okay, you guys need to like retire and let me have something new. So
I'm I'm similar to you. I get bored of my own stories, and so I have a really great team. And I'm like, so I'm thinking about, and they're like, do you have ADHD? Because you're not supposed to be thinking about your next series when we haven't even wrapped up this one. I'm like, damn it.
yeah, but yeah. So I keep a little file of ideas. So if I'm writing one and this idea keeps bothering me, I write down the idea and then I tell the character in my head, now you shut up until I get this done. I can't write at once. You know.
So do you use like Google Docs or do you use like Excel to keep?
I just have a Google Doc. I open up, throw things in it. You know, not in any particular order. Just these are my ideas. And then when it's time to start my next manuscript, if there isn't a specific one like really banging, to come out. I just start reading over it until one of them says, ooh, ooh, yeah. So
I like how that works. Last question, historical, present day, or future?
So I've written three in the historical, and I love that genre because I really love the research, but I don't want to be known as a historical fiction author. And so, I don't know. That's a really tough question for me because, like I said, I'm doing a present right now, and I have an idea for a future. So I don't know.
Well, that is challenging to write historical because there is a lot of research, not just only like, dialogue and setting and wardrobe. There's so much research.
Yeah, like whether or not a particular product was even available. Like in An Enemy Like Me, I have him putting Brill cream in his hair, and it was like, wait a minute, was that around? I know it came out around World War II, but was it around in 1939?
Mm-hmm.
Just in case you want to know. But those are the kinds of things that you have to look up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it has been a wonderful time with you. I'm so glad to have jumped on, and we will do this again. I will catch you in the DMs.
Fantastic. Thanks so
Thanks so
much.
much, Teri. Ciao for now. Bye.